Hello and welcome to my presentation on different types of relationships of organisms in the wild. My name is Alvin Kurt Airoso. I go by Kurt, and I teach high school biology and also anatomy and physiology. So in our unit on ecology, one of the things we go over are the different types of relationships that organisms have in the wild. Now, most people are familiar with predation, the process of hunting, catching, and killing another organism in order to eat it for food. But most people don't understand that animals, plants and animals, are also in competition. And they're also another type of relationship called symbiosis, which is a long-lasting relationship between two different species in the wild. So right here you can see the topic, biotic relationship. Biotic means living, so relationships between living things in the wild. Here are my themes. Commensalism, the two types of competition, inter and intra-specific competition. Mutualism, parasitism, predation, the keywords predator and prey, and of course the broad term of symbiosis. My focus is obviously science, and to be more specific, it would be biology, and even more specific, it'll be ecology. I got grade level 9 right here, but I teach 9th through 12th graders. I could not figure out how to change that number. So after this intro slide, you will click on this tab right here for predation. And when you do that, you will come to this slide right here. You'll see the predator and prey relationship. Here, of course, the bald eagle is playing the role of the predator. And this looks like a northern pike fish playing the role as the prey. Now, this is not going to be a very long-lasting relationship. These two will not be hanging out with each other for very long. So predation is just the process of capturing and feeding on another organism. Predator, of course, is doing the hunting, and the prey is being hunted. These are called consumers or heterotrophs, which means they have to eat in order to get their energy. They're not like plants, which can make their own food within their own cells. And those are called autotrophs. We are also not considering animals that are considered scavengers, like vultures. That is not predator-prey relationship because they are not catching and killing another organism to eat it. They're just eating something that's already dead. They're eating dead tissue. After reading that and viewing the image above, students can click on this predation video and they will see different types of predation in action. And now after clicking on this next tab right here, the symbiosis tab, and you can see the little subcategories here of the three different types. You got mutualism, parasitism, commensalism, and then also a little short video on the different types of symbiotic relationships. Well, symbiosis just basically means living together. And that's a long-lasting relationship between two different species in which at least one of those organisms benefits from the relationship. Sometimes they both benefit from it, sometimes one. You just never know. It just depends on the type of symbiotic relationship you have. So now we're going to explore the three different types. All right, so clicking on the little subcategory of mutualism, you get my favorite type of symbiotic relationship. It's mutualism. That is a relationship in which both organisms benefit. So we go plus, plus. It is a positive relationship for both organisms. You can see the image here of the rhinoceros, and it has a fairly large flock of these birds on its back. Well, those birds, they are benefiting from this relationship because they are actually picking parasites off the back of the rhinoceros. So they're getting a free meal. They're also getting protection because if you're standing on top of a rhinoceros, usually nothing's going to mess with you. Now, the rhinoceros is also benefiting from this relationship because it is getting parasites removed from its back. And now clicking on the next little subcategory, you get the next symbiotic relationship. We were talking about parasites on the last slide. Well, this is a parasite, very common and very popular one, the flea. This is a type of relationship where one organism benefits, that would be the parasite that benefits. The host organism is affected badly. It's affected in a harmful way. So a classic example right here is the flea on a dog or a cat. Obviously, that'll be a very good relationship for the flea. It gets a nice warm place to live. It's got a lot of blood to suck from its host animal, but that is a negative effect on the dog or the cat. Now, it's important to point out here that this is not predation. Even though the flea is technically feeding off the dog or the cat or whatever animal it's on, it is not wanting to kill its host organism. That would actually be bad for it if it killed its host organism. It just wants to feed off it, but also to make sure it stays alive. And clicking on the final subcategory of commensalism, this is the third type of symbiotic relationship, probably the one that people don't know about the most. And this is one where it's always going to be positive for one organism, but in this one it's actually neutral for the second organism. And you can see that here. You have these remoras, otherwise called pilot fish, and they're staying right next to this shark right here. Now, it's positive for the pilot fish for several reasons. A, they get protection from predators when they're right next to a shark. B, anytime the shark eats something, little fragments of that food will get scattered around and they get a free meal. And C, it's much easier for them to move through the water when they're basically almost stuck to the shark. So it takes very little energy for them to move through the water while they're right next to the shark. The shark, on the other hand, totally unaffected. He does not benefit from the relationship and he's not harmed by it. It is totally neutral. And now, after seeing the pictures and reading the text, students could then click on this, which will take them here. And they can click on this link right here, courtesy of the Amoeba Sisters, which was on YouTube. And they have a 3-minute video that goes over all the types of symbiotic relationships. Now the students will click on, they're going to keep going. They click on the major topic of competition, and then they're going to see the 2 different types right here. And it starts out with intra-specific competition. And that is a type of competition in the wild between members of the same species. So here in the image, right here, you can see 2 male elephant seals competing for the right to mate. Now, these same elephant seals will also compete for the same food sources. So animals and even plants. Plants are also competing. They have to grow fast in order to stay out of the shade. If they grow too slow, it's not good. The plant needs to grow fast because it's competing for sunlight. It also needs to compete. Its roots got to go down underneath the ground very rapidly in order to reach water. So that is intraspecific competition, competition between members of the same species. And now when they click on the subcategory of interspecific competition, it's still competition, and something to remember in the wild, for people, competition is usually good. It makes you better at whatever you're trying to do. But in the wild, competition is negative for both organisms because finding food, finding mates, it's not easy to do in the wild. So any kind of disturbance to finding food is actually bad. It gives you a worse chance to survive. But anyways, interspecific competition, as you can see here, that's when 2 different species are competing for something. And in that photo, you can see the gopher has got something that he's about ready to eat, and these birds are competing. They're trying to take that food away from him. So that would be a type of interspecific competition because they're different species, and in this case, they're trying to competing for food. And then here you can see where plants can also compete for sunlight. They need to grow fast in order to get out of the shade, and their roots also need, it's always the fastest growing part of any plant is the roots. They need to get down where they can reach the water in order to survive. And that is interspecific competition. Now, once they reach here, if they've been going along, the students could hit quiz and then click on this link right there, and it'll take them to their multiple choice quiz. When they click on it, they will go to this screen. You will go here, and this screen is compliments of surveymonkey.com. So this is actually an interactive where the students can actually plug in their answers and get their results in real time. So number 1, an organism, if it captures and feeds on another, my students would put predation. A long-lasting relationship between two different species in which at least one benefits. They will say that is called symbiosis. A type of symbiotic relationship in which one organism benefits and the other is harmed. That is the one called parasitism. And then that's page 1. And here comes page 2. So this is the second part of their little brief assessment. Type of symbiotic relationship in which both organisms benefit. That's mutually good for both, so that's going to be called mutualism. Number 5, and this is highlighted. You can click on it. It makes it a lot easier to read, but only one of them can be highlighted at a time. Symbiotic relationship in which one organism benefits and the other is unaffected. That was commensalism. Now we're into competition right here. If two crows are fighting for the same food source, since the crows are the same species, that's going to be intra-specific competition. Now if you have a wolf or wolves and a brown bear competing over territory, since those are obviously different species, we'll call that interspecific competition. And my final slide, other than the comments, and yes, in our presentation today I did see how to allow comments, so I did make that adjustment. And so here's a little bit about me. There's one of my email address. Here's the grades I teach. I do teach science, that's very broad, but biology and anatomy. And there is a picture of me. All right, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in the next class.